The research-based pharmaceutical industry plays a unique role in developing new medicines and vaccines to prevent and treat diseases and improve the lives of patients worldwide. Its key contribution to global health is turning fundamental research into innovative treatments. Industry success rests on continuous innovation for the prevention and treatment of common, complex, and neglected diseases, and for improvements in existing treatments. Despite often challenging business and regulatory conditions, the industry undertakes investments that are considerably more risky than those in most high-technology sectors. By investing billions of dollars and thousands of scientist hours, it pushes the limits of science, fosters medical progress, and contributes to the prosperity of society. The private sector produces nearly all the medicines and vaccines on the market. When a pharmaceutical company invests in research and development of new medicines and vaccines, it first screens for chemical and biological compounds that exhibit the potential for treating new or existing conditions. R&D begins once researchers identify a promising compound among, on average, 5,000 to 10,000 screened. Researchers then extensively test the compound to ensure its efficacy and safety, a process that can take 10 to 15 years. To illustrate, in 2015, 56 new medicines were launched, while currently more than 7,000 compounds are at different stages of development globally. The difference in these numbers highlights the many research hurdles to be overcome before compounds can be developed into safe and effective medicines. Today, the cost of developing a successful medicine can exceed, according to some studies, $2.6 billion compared to $179 million in the 1970s. This increase reflects the various technical, regulatory, and economic challenges facing R&D pipelines. Companies often experience lost research and development investments, that is, R&D expenditures that do not materialize in a market-approved medicine, because pharmaceutical research and development is marked by high failure rates. An early-phase compound may have a promising outlook, but only preclinical and clinical trials will demonstrate its efficacy, quality, and safety. In addition, lost investments may increase when a failure occurs in later R&D phases. A phase 3 failure is significantly more costly than a preclinical failure because each phase is associated with a certain amount of required investment. Rising R&D costs have been accompanied by more stringent testing requirements. The number of new chemical or biological entities, that means NCEs and NBEs, launched on the world market increased to 226 in the 2011 to 2015 period, compared with 146 a decade earlier. In addition, once a medicine receives regulatory approval, national health authorities require companies to track and report patient experiences, referred to as pharmacovigilance. These reporting requirements are becoming stricter, raising the investment cost in a given medicine as long as it is being marketed. Pharmaceutical R&D has dramatically improved the lives of patients. Medical discovery, big and small, have increased life expectancy and resulted in a better quality of life for many. Vaccines have proven to be one of the most effective preventable technologies in the fight against infectious diseases, with an almost unparalleled impact on public health, including, but by no means limited to, ridding the world of smallpox, driving polio into the brink of eradication, and virtually eliminated measles until recently, diphtheria, and rubella in many parts of the world. Currently, vaccines save the lives of over 2.5 million children every year. Between year 2000 and 2014, immunization campaigns cut the number of deaths caused by measles by 79%, with a reduction of 92% in Africa between year 2000 and 2008. The new generation of vaccines is making the same kind of public health impact as their pioneering predecessors, dramatically reducing the burden of pneumococcal disease and rotavirus disease, two of the biggest killers of children, and cancers caused by human papillomavirus (HPV). Since 1928, scientists have discovered and developed 19 classes of antibiotics. Currently, 34 new antibacterial compounds are in development, of which 15 are vaccines and 19 small and large molecules. With the help of major medical discoveries, the research-based pharmaceutical industry has developed more than 35 antiretroviral treatments for HIV/AIDS, essential to control of the epidemic. More than 7,000 medicines are in development worldwide, more than 200 drugs for HIV/AIDS, almost 2,000 for cancer, 400 for diabetes, and 563 for cardiovascular diseases. Pharmaceutical progress has led to a dramatic decline in death rates for diseases such as HIV/AIDS, cancer, polio, and measles. For example, death rates for HIV/AIDS in the United States have fallen from 10.2 deaths per 100,000 people in 1990 to 2 deaths per 100,000 people in 2014, a reduction of 80%. The number of AIDS-related deaths worldwide peaked at 2.5 million in 2005 and has since fallen to an estimated 1.1 million deaths in 2015. This can be largely attributed to the introduction of new antiretrovirus therapies, ARTs, combined with more patients being provided with treatment. Pharmaceutical innovation can also reduce the costs incurred by governments and healthcare systems. For example, every $1 US spent on childhood vaccination in the States saves $10.2 in disease treatment costs. Another study demonstrated the lack of adherence to type 2 diabetes therapies in the States generate $4 billion per year on avoidable costs to the national healthcare system. In this manner, pharmaceutical innovation directly impacts patients' health and indirectly alleviates the unseen economic burden of disease. With the advancement of medication technology, the regime for chronic diseases can be simplified. As such, it would be easier for patients to be compliant with the regime rather than missing or taking excessive doses. It has been shown that improving compliance increases productivity. The improvement on the reduction of disability and absenteeism was found most remarkable in dyslipidemia, chronic respiratory diseases such as asthma and COPD. Markets are naturally occurring phenomena where supply rises to meet demand. In real life, there are market failures when it comes to serving low-income members of society. The case of pharmaceuticals is a particularly egregious one where much of the world's population lacks access to medicines. Undoubtedly, this has a negative reverberating effect on economies throughout the developing world, reducing both productivity and possibilities for social mobility. There are certain aspects of the pharmaceutical market that lead to and perpetuate this market failure. These can be demonstrated through a review of supply and demand conditions in the industry. The recent growth of pharmaceutical companies in the South is a promising breakthrough, yet new approaches, including consideration of a variety of sources of good health, are still needed to solve overarching problems. The structure of the pharmaceutical sector is unique. It is characterized by a great variety of stakeholders, significant involvement of the state, and a high degree of regulation aimed at achieving different objectives. These objectives range from supporting innovation to ensuring a high degree of public health and keeping public expenditure under control. The sector itself is R&D driven, and continued innovation is only possible when the protection of intellectual property rights, primarily patents, is adequately ensured. Total health spending, be it public and private, varies widely across the world, mainly because of the differences in the national health systems. It ranges from approximately 1.4% of GDP in Democratic Republic of Congo to around 11% in France and significantly lower than in the United States, around 15%. During the past decades, healthcare spending has increased despite continuous efforts to contain costs. Pharmaceuticals have been a key factor driving the growth in healthcare expenditures. Since 1995, spending on pharmaceuticals has increased faster than total health spending in OECD countries. In year 2006, pharmaceutical spending accounted for 17% of health spending in the OECD. Today, pharmaceutical spending is the third largest component in healthcare spending after hospitals and ambulatory care. In year 2007, the total size of the pharmaceutical market in Europe was around 138 billion euro on an ex-factory basis, which is almost one-third of the global turnover. It includes prescription and non-prescription medicine for human use. The breakdown per EU member state indicates the 5 biggest national markets, namely France, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom and Spain, account for 73% of the total EU market. At retail level, the total size of the market for the same period was 214 billion. Therefore, the pharmaceutical market accounted for close to 2% of annual EU GDP. This corresponds to an annual amount of approximately 430 euro per European citizen. The main supply channel, as indicated here by bold arrows, runs from the pharmaceutical company through wholesalers and pharmacies to the patients, which is a retail sale. In general, medicines are prescribed by medical doctors and reimbursed by the insurance or health system. Apart from the retail chain described, medicines can also be dispensed to patients by hospitals. As far as distribution is concerned, a distinction must be made between sales in hospitals and sales to pharmacies via wholesalers, which is retail distribution. Hospitals are more often buy directly from pharmaceutical companies, for example, following a tender process, but they also buy part of their requirements via wholesalers. According to the EU data, the retail segment was the main source of income for most pharmaceutical companies. On the supply side, the sector is characterized primarily by two types of companies. The first type consists of research and development-based companies. Here we describe as originator companies, which can range from very large multinational to small and medium enterprises concentrating on certain niche products. These companies carry out research into new pharmaceuticals, develop them from the laboratory to marketing, authorization, and sell them on the market. Their products are largely patent protected. The second type of company is generally referred to as a generic company. They produce and sell pharmaceutical products which have lost their exclusivity status. That means the patent is over. These generic products contain the same active pharmaceutical ingredients and can therefore be used for same treatments. However, the products are generally sold at a much lower price than the original product, which helps contain public health budgets. Both types of companies sometimes buy active pharmaceutical ingredients from specialized companies, which is upstream activity, unless they produce the active pharmaceutical ingredients themselves. Generic and originator companies both have to deal with a variety of government agencies, including patent offices and marketing authorization offices, be it at national or regional level. Originator companies are active in R&D, manufacturing, and marketing patented medicines. Their business model is based on research into and the development of new chemical entities, NCEs, and the incremental improvement of others already on the market. In addition to the development of NCEs, some 60% of the respondent originator companies are active or intend to become involved in research into and production of biopharmaceuticals in the immediate future. The main focus of activity reported by originator companies is on reaching unmet medical needs by bringing new prescription medicines to the market. For most of the originator companies, activities performed in-house range from the discovery of new compounds to life cycle management before or after patent expiry. In between, they are involved in research and development, promotion, and sales of their pharmaceutical products. They carry out this wide range of activity alone or in collaboration with other companies or entities of various types, such as universities and research institutes. The collaboration can take a number of forms, including joint research and licensing agreement, co-development and co-marketing agreements, co-promotion and joint ventures. At least large originator companies have their own sales and marketing networks. Most of the originator companies have a worldwide presence, with different departments located in different regions. These are real multinational companies acting in a global environment. Typically, strategic business decisions with regard to R&D projects are made at a global level, while marketing and distribution decisions are rather taken at local level. In addition to large originator companies, there are numerous SMEs, small and medium-scale enterprises, which typically lack the resources required to conduct all necessary steps from basic research to the marketing and distribution of the finished products. SMEs in the pharmaceutical sector, therefore, tend to specialize in innovation in a well-defined and narrow field. That is what we call niche. For example, focusing on specific indications or pharmaceutical formulations. These SMEs either decide to out-license or sell their innovations to larger companies who have resources to conduct clinical trials and the necessary marketing. Large pharmaceutical companies are increasingly in licensing new products. Currently, 25% of the molecules in clinical development have been acquired from other companies, including SMEs. This is confirmed by the findings of the sector inquiry and shows the importance of SMEs for maintaining the innovative character of the pharmaceutical sector. Generic companies active on the developed market tend to be significantly smaller than originator companies. Many of them are SMEs, largely producing medicines for sale in their local market. A number of generic companies have recently gained a global presence with a turnover exceeding €1 billion per year, with more set to join them in the near future. Generic companies employed in year 2000 around 130,000 employees in Europe. These work primarily in areas such as development, production, and sales. The basic business model of generic companies is to develop an identical or equivalent medicine to an economically successful originator product and market it as soon as the originator product encounters loss of exclusivity. Occasionally, they may even enter the market earlier, most notably in cases where the generic company believes patents of originator companies are not to be valid, or when the generic company believes it has found a way to produce the medicine without infringing any patent rights. Patent settlement agreements between the originator and generic companies, or the launch of a generic product by the original company itself, can also lead to early generic entry. Large generic companies are active with a significant range of products, and they are usually able to develop a generic version of many medicine that was previously patent protected. Like their counterparts in the originator industry, generic companies are subject to strict regulations, in particular as regards marketing authorization and national measures for pricing and reimbursement. Specifically concerning marketing authorization, generic medicines are subject to the same requirements of quality, safety, and efficacy as all other medicinal products intended for the community market. However, they do not need to provide detailed information from preclinical tests and clinical trials if they can prove that their product is equivalent to the product of the originator companies for which such tests and trials have already been carried out. Since generic companies are able to provide cheaper versions of pharmaceutical products, they are an important pillar in most containment measures of national health policies. Most countries claim that they support the use of generic medicines in their territory in one way or another. Originator and generic companies also agree that generic competition creates and maintains incentives for innovation, since generic competition limits the period during which originator companies can recoup their investments. Originator companies are incentivized to constantly search for new medicines. Patents provide a patent holder a 20-year monopoly right to exclude others from using the invention he or she patented. As long as the patent holder does not grant authorization or refuses the license, no one can use the invention, except where a compulsory licensing is granted. There are typically two kinds of patents: product patents and process patents. Product patents confers more powerful protection as it is difficult to invent around a product once it is patented, while process patents are easier to be infringed as there are multiple routes to produce the same product. Neither the Paris Convention nor the Agreement on Trade-related Intellectual Property Rights, the short form TRIPS, clearly lists patentable subject matter, except broadly stating that a patent is available for any inventions, where products or processes in all fields of technology. Presumably, pharmaceutical products and processes are protected by patent because discovery of new drugs should be considered in field of technology. Indeed, pharmaceutical products and processes are protected in most WTO member states. The Indian industry has progressed through the value-added ladder of pharmaceutical production as a result of its domestic policies as well as the presence of supportive factor conditions, namely the pool of scientific excellence available at low cost and the large domestic demand for pharmaceutical, which enables economic viability in the scale-intensive active pharmaceutical ingredient API production stage. As of 1999, the Indian pharmaceutical industry accounted for 70% of the bulk drugs and 80% of the formulations in the country, making India one of the few countries in the world achieving self-sufficiency in drugs. The industry is highly fragmented. No single company has more than 7% market share, and the largest 5 companies account for just 20% of the total market. The most promising firms have solid funding, fueled by profits and early embrace of the capital markets. The development of the Indian pharmaceutical industry has been shaped by the position of the Indian government on intellectual property law as outlined in the Indian Patent Act of 1970s, under which only process patents were covered. Furthermore, the Act provided only 7 years of process patent protection for pharmaceuticals, about half of the average 15 years required to develop and test on new drugs. The result, more than 3 decades of reverse engineering on patent products, a flourishing domestic generic market, as well as strong chemistry and process engineering expertise. To meet its obligations under TRIPS, one of the outcomes of the Uruguay trade round in 1986 to 1994, India will have to amend its patent laws by year 2005 to allow for pharmaceutical product patents on any product with a patent issued after January 1st, 1995. From year 2005, 20-year product patents will be awarded. The introduction of product patents has important implications for both Indian and Western pharmaceutical companies. After 2005, Indian companies will increasingly need to look beyond the domestic generic market to sustain their sales, since their traditional strategy of copying on-patent drugs will no longer be allowed. They will consequently need to look towards export markets and focus on product innovation. In pursuing the regulated markets, the more successful Indian firms are faced with a similar strategic choice in how to achieve such growth, whether to cooperate or compete with the large international pharmaceutical companies. However, there are multiple sub-strategies that Indian firms can choose within the framework of this strategic dilemma, and the strongest Indian firms have been able to pursue both strategies simultaneously. The competitive business model. Many firms plan to meet their product patent challenge with a multi-stage strategy of moving up the product value chain and increasing exports to regulated markets such as the States and Europe. Leveraging their comparative cost advantages, these firms plan to target plain vanilla generic sales to regulated markets in the near term and to develop more difficult to manufacture generics such as injectables, low-risk NDAs, and follow-on biologics in the medium term. The most advanced firms hope to evolve into the area of NCE or proprietary drugs. Concerning the cooperative business model, while changing legislation and technological capacity are pushing Indian firms to consider new ways of competing, there is also a pull from MNCs encouraging the same firms to achieve their growth targets through cooperative strategies. This pull factor stems from the research-based MNCs' increasing need to cut costs and boost productivity, and the consequent research to invest an increasing amount in external collaboration, perhaps 20% outside the company on a contract or part investment basis. This is true not only for manufacturing, but also for research. As an alternative, or in noted exceptions in addition to the competition models described, some of the Indian companies, having recognized an opportunity to meet the needs of the MNCs, have chosen to follow a more service provider partnership-oriented model. Although the cooperative business model is clearly well established in other Indian sectors, India's drug outsourcing market at 470 million is still at a nascent stage. However, it is expected to grow 30% a year, hitting 800 million by year 2005, according to Bombay Brokerage Kotak Institutional Equities. Variants on the cooperative business model include servicing large pharmaceutical MNCs, be it research-based or generic, with API, contract manufacturing for already existing drugs or research candidates, clinical outsourcing, and research partnerships. For more than a decade, analysts of the pharmaceutical industry have argued that the conventional blockbuster model of drug discovery and development is unsustainable, despite many years of investment in new life science technologies. Explanations have included a failure of innovation capacity and low productivity, a focus on incremental rather than radical innovations, excessive regulatory barriers, and a lack of venture capital investment. However, an alternative argument can be posed that the pharmaceutical innovation model has been remarkably resilient and multinational companies have been extremely robust in maintaining the market dominance. Pfizer's closure of major R&D sites in year 2011 illustrated a broader global trend in big pharma, where large-scale merger and acquisition activity is followed by major company restructuring and R&D rationalization as firms try to implement strategies to meet the growing demands of blockbuster innovation and sustain revenue streams. The pharmaceutical industry is continuing to face a number of innovation challenges. Low productivity, patent expiry, rising costs of R&D, high attrition rate of compounds in phase 2, high regulatory hurdles, increasing concern about adverse side effects, and so on. But a major challenge that is often ignored is what we call the problem of maturity. By maturity, drugs have already been developed for all the easy targets, and now that they are off patent, they no longer attract the high profit margins necessary for sustainable growth. It is increasingly difficult to find novel products that are effective enough to compete with existing product ranges, safe enough to pass regulatory scrutiny, cheap enough to manufacture, as well as cost-effective enough to meet reimbursement requirements. These factors, rather than complacency or endemic failure of innovative capacity, play a major role in the drying up of product pipelines. In turn, they lead to waves of merger, acquisition, and strategic alliance behavior and recurring experiments in organizational restructuring. The important and predominant role of the regulatory system plays in life science innovation, more so than almost any other industry sector. Although regulation has a direct impact on product development, the impact is more far-reaching than simply ensuring products are safe and effective. Regulation essentially determines company strategy, the types of firm able to bring products to market, and the structural dynamics of the sector as a whole. Under current circumstances, this is a barrier to the successful development and delivery of truly innovative technologies and therapies that would move the sector onto a high value-added innovation trajectory. Instead, change in the sector has largely been incremental. It has been argued that the industry is heading for a tipping point at some time in the near future, which could lead to the fundamental disruption that seems necessary and inevitable, but also perhaps unimaginable. Regulation, because it has not been flexible and adaptable, acts to reinforce a situation whereby current blockbuster innovation models are unsustainable, but discourage new developments that could bring about necessary change. Nobody can yet predict the eventual trigger for change, nor the outcomes in terms of winners and losers. The key challenge for ensuring that necessary structural change in the sector is manageable is the construction of smarter regulatory approaches that are more responsive to the opportunities emerging from the life sciences and do not simply support the status quo of multinational dominance. At present, the lengthy, expensive, and demanding nature of the drug regulatory system is sustaining the unchallengeable supremacy of the big pharma companies. The high cost and long delays of taking a product through cumbersome regulatory system ensures that only the largest companies are able to operate throughout the innovation life cycle. For novel technologies or products that may disrupt conventional big pharma strategy, such as stem cells, it is difficult to identify a route to market for the smaller companies that are at the forefront of developing the science. Regulatory science can over time become dysfunctional and out of step with changes in the science and technology that they regulate. Furthermore, as regulatory systems evolve, they can become so complex that any change or addition to one set of regulations can have unpredictable consequences for other parts of the system and the companies affected by them. Regulatory initiatives can have a transformative impact on innovation, both positive and negative, but also unpredictable. sensitivity towards the impact of regulation on particular industry sectors, and innovation strategy is crucial when designing or redesigning regulatory systems for novel therapies that have no established route to market. Because regulatory change in one policy area can have unexpected consequences for other policy areas or even entire innovation sectors, it is vital that regulators are made aware of potentially useful but vulnerable products and processes under development and their location within broader innovation networks. Smart regulatory systems will always strive to enable positive changes in innovation strategies and adequately discriminate among products on the basis of socially and economically relevant criteria, as this will be more effective and efficient than an indiscriminate strategy that simply tries to constrain undesirable behavior. An enabling criterion will positively affect the speed of the regulation's influence. The appropriateness of its product or process discrimination will determine its effectiveness in guiding product development in desirable directions. The development of path-breaking regulation for path-breaking technology should always be a last resort. When considering which regulatory option is most appropriate for new innovative technology, a good default rule would be to invoke the regulatory system in operation for the industry sector for which the innovation is path-dependent rather than path-breaking.